Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I have a very, very special guest today, real estate legend, Brad Chandler, CEO of Express Home Buyers. This guy is a monster. He does 300 homes every single year, works 1 hour a week, and he spends his time focusing on what we're going to talk about today. So Brad, thank you for joining me on the podcast here. I'm excited to dive deep with you on a lot of different things.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited as well.
So let's get started right into it. Can you just talk about maybe your business, just people who may have heard Brad Chandler, seen your videos, your Express Home Buyers ranking all over Google and all these markets all across the country? Can you just give a little blurb about your real estate business and kind of your relationship with it today?
Yeah, I mean, we'll go back to ninth grade. I read a book with how to buy real estate with no money down and knew I always wanted to do real estate. I found out why I wanted to do real estate, which we can get to in a little bit. And so fast forward from ninth grade to 2003 and 2002, an investor bought my neighbor's house in late 2002. And I went and talked to him and he says, yeah, I buy houses 30% below market. I fix them up and resell them. I was like, wow, I probably didn't remember so much about that book I read in ninth grade. So I spent 8 long months trying to find my first deal. I was working a full-time job, coming home nights and weekends. I put my newborn son to bed at I'd spend from 6 to 8 with him. And then from 8 to 11, I'd work. I'd pound weed by house signs. I'd hand address hundreds of envelopes. I'd do door hangers. I mean, I did everything. And after 8 long months, I found my first deal, which was in July. And then in July and August, I bought 6 houses somehow, quit in October, came home and told my wife at the time that I just quit and I was starting Express Home Buyers. She's like, are you crazy? Like, we have a newborn son and I have 2 kids we got to support. And I was like, it'll be fine. And here we are, 4,000 houses later, and it's fine. It's been a good run. I mean, just like any entrepreneur, I've had serious ups and downs. But yeah, life is really good. Business is really good.
So you're currently still the CEO. I mean, what does the business look like? 300 homes a year? I mean, you have a team of 50 people? Like, what does it look like? What are you doing in the business these days?
So we're probably at about 25 people total when you count our full-time virtual assistants in the Philippines. So our major purchases are in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. We did open up Los Angeles last year, and that's been going really well, better than we thought. So we're putting some more resources there, and we just focus on fix and flips and wholesales. I might be flying Saturday to look at a house in Naples. I just kind of did this because I felt bad that I haven't been supporting them too much. So I was like, I'll be the one to go down there if we need to. So I might fly down in the morning, come back at night, but it's a house that was listed originally for like $2.1 million. And we're trying to get it for, the low ones. Who knows what it'll sell for, but we think it's a good opportunity.
That's crazy. 25 people, man. And you're only working an hour a week in there. Can you kind of break down maybe the org chart? So how did you set it up in a way where it's pretty passive for you at this point with 25 people?
Yeah. So we have a CFO who's really strong in operations too. So he's great at the books and the operations part. And then my partner is involved. So my partner still does a lot on the construction side. We're actually going to be doing our first new build house in Arlington ever. So we're going to tear down a house. And so he's working on that. He works on all the financing stuff, all the investor relations. And then we've got a guy that heads up dispositions who's been with us for like almost the entire time we've been in business. And he's got a couple of people underneath him. And then I've got a guy that runs the acquisition department. And we've got, 5 people underneath him. And then we have a kind of sales support person who's kind of like a COO role as well. And she's helping with marketing now. And then we have a team of VAs.
So it's all the marketing you have. It sounds almost like largely sales roles. Is a lot of the marketing kind of outsourced to agencies or whatnot versus having a whole in-house marketing team?
It is. Yep. We work with a couple agencies. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. And this is interesting. So for people who are wholesaling or flipping, I'm always like, is wholesaling a marketing business or a sales business? And some different people, like when I set up my business, it was more like marketing focused. I like marketing, but I know a lot of successful investors, they focus on the sales and outsource the marketing. So do you believe that maybe at least for wholesaling, it's really a sales business versus a marketing business, or or both? Or what do you
I
think
think
about
it's
that?
I think it's both, honestly. It doesn't matter who's doing it, because I mean you could outsource sales too if you really wanted to, right? It's a function of you've got to get the sellers and then you've got to get the buyers, and marketing goes for both the sellers and the buyers, and then you've got the sales that goes for both the sellers and the buyers. So I think it's
Yeah.
both. It's an interesting business because we've got two sets of customers. We've got the buyer and the seller.
Right. Right. Gotcha. So, okay, awesome. Yeah. So what do you do with your time then? You have an hour a week working. What do you do with the other 167 hours, you know?
So I spend it helping entrepreneurs find happiness in their lives. A couple of years ago, trying to get my son help for his anxiety, I was on a call with a lady, a performance coach, and she said I had a tic, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You blink profusely when you talk about your childhood. You may have some unresolved childhood programming or stress or trauma that's affecting your son." So I went out and worked with her ex-Navy SEAL husband and herself. And in the matter of like 3 hours, my life forever changed. We went back to my childhood and figured out the programming, the false programming, and the stories that I told myself around certain events that really dominated my life, and I didn't know it. Just like now, my coaching company, like none of my clients know it either. Most of the world doesn't know it, honestly. I feel like in the last couple of years, Tim, that I found the secret to life. Honestly, I feel like we're born this perfect creature, whether you believe in God or the universe. We're all born from one person, one creature, or one source, and that source doesn't say, well, we're going to make Brad a little better than Tim, right? We're all the same. We all belong. We're all good enough. But somehow, from our parents' imperfections, they make us feel less than perfect, or they can't meet our needs. And from that, what your brain does is it creates a story. I'm not good enough. I don't belong. I can't get what I want. And that story, until you do the work, is in your subconscious mind forever, because your subconscious mind doesn't know time. And your subconscious mind, its only purpose in your body and your mind is to keep you alive. So it doesn't care if you're happy or sad. So that drives everything in your life. Why do you come home and drink 3 glasses of wine? Why are you fighting with your wife? Why are you obese or way too much? Why is your business up and down constantly? Why are you addicted? Why are you depressed? Why are you anxious? Everything comes back to this program as a child. So I figured it out. And now I've studied under some of the best people in the world. And I know my mission and why I was put here, and that's to impact the world by helping people get out of this, the rut and the untrue stories that they're living in that are controlling their lives in a negative way.
I think this is a great topic that a lot of, especially like real estate podcasts, or in general, don't really talk about. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. I feel like a lot of people who become entrepreneurs in the first place, especially in our industry, which is very like people get into it to make money. Let's be honest. A lot of people do. They get into it because of pain, almost because maybe they lacked control over their life growing up, or because they feel insecure and they're like, that's why they started the business, so they can try to heal some of the things they have. So I think a lot of kind of entrepreneurs, you, me, other people, already, just because the fact that we know each other, we all have a similar pain. That's why we're here in the first place. Do you agree with that? What are your thoughts on that?
150%. Yeah. So I said earlier, I touched on, I'll tell you why I started the business. I didn't know why I started the business then. My thought was, I'm going to make a lot of money. I didn't know why I wanted to make a lot of money. Actually, I thought it would bring me happiness. When I look back on it 20 years after, the only reason I started the business was I thought that the money would bring me worthiness. If I could make a bunch of money, then the world would think I'm enough. And all we have to do is look around at our society and look at all the multimillionaires that unfortunately and sadly take their lives, because it doesn't work that way. You can go make a gazillion dollars, but if you feel you're not enough, I work with clients right now that have a gazillion dollars in the bank and they're working themselves crazy at the expense of their family, because they don't even know why they're doing it. They're doing it because they don't feel enough. So they've got to get more, whether it's work, porn, alcohol, weed, women, whatever it is, you need more. So I agree with you. Number one, I think people start businesses because they think money will bring them happiness, or the fact that they'll feel worthy. And number two, you said something really smart too, control. I think a lot of us lack control in our lives, and we think that being an entrepreneur will give us control. And it does to some degree, like you can control your schedule. But if you really think about this world, there's nothing you can truly control except your thinking. And every single problem you have in your life is a thinking problem. And that thinking is flawed because of your programming. So Yeah, I'm with you.
So what is the next step? I mean, there's so much here. I don't even know what to ask. Can you just kind of go over maybe what's the next step here? So let's say I'm an entrepreneur listening to this podcast and I'm like, hey, maybe that's me, maybe it's not. I don't know. What do they do next?
So look, if I was listening to this podcast, we haven't even gotten to the whole self-love talk. So the childhood programming takes away this inner self-love that you have, or at least it masks it. So now I didn't feel self-love for 47 years of my life. I didn't have a lot of compassion for myself. I talked negatively to myself. I used to tell people how dumb I was. My wife, my probably both wives were like, stop saying that. You're not dumb. I talked negatively, like just did self-destructive things. And but if we'd have been listening, if someone would have been in my seat and I was listening to this 3 years ago, I would have been like, I have self-love. I thought I love myself. I would have told you that I don't care what other people think. I'm Brad and I don't care what other people think. All in all, the truth was I did care. I just didn't know it. So that's why I had to, when I went to a social situation, either smoke weed or drink to make me feel better, because I didn't want those people to judge me. Or if I wanted to go play golf in a tournament, I get really nervous. Why did I get nervous? Well, I didn't want people to judge me. And I think my thinking was if I won the tournament, I might be worthy. So I put all that pressure on myself to play well. So I'm the guy that would have been like self-love, schmelf-love. Like this is just a bunch of woo-woo stuff. It doesn't mean anything. I'm here to tell you that 99% of every problem in the world, I can trace back to an individual's lack of self-love and self-compassion. It's why our prisons are full. It's why the war in Ukraine is going on. It's why we have child sex trafficking. It's why addictions are off, going crazy. Why depression, anxiety. 33% of Americans are on freaking SSRIs, anti-anxiety or antidepressant drugs. Like, come on, no one's born with depression or anxiety. So I was that guy 3 years ago that would have been like, no, my life is pretty good. I've been divorced twice. I smoke weed. I drink. Like, who doesn't? I'm dating a lot of girls. Like, what guy wouldn't want to date a bunch of girls and be on a bunch of dating apps? So I was wrong, right? All you have to do is look at your results. So I created in the last year this self-love quiz. It's like takes 3 minutes to take. It's 12 questions. And it will tell you, do you have extreme self-love? If you have extreme self-love, I bet you your life, your relationships, your business, your health are really good. The next category down is mild self-love. And then the bottom one is lack of self-love. If you take this quiz at bradchandler.com/love, you take this quiz and you score lack of or mild self-love, don't be distraught. Don't be sad, because I'm here to tell you that your life can dramatically and profoundly change. Because if you have mild or lack of self-love, everything in your life is negatively affected. If you think you have a good relationship with your wife or your husband, I can tell you it can be way better. If your kids have behavioral problems, they have anxiety, they have OCD, they have depression, it's because of the way you feel about yourself. Like, if you want to know why your kids have problems, go look in the mirror. It's always the parent. Maybe that's a little bit of an overstatement. It's usually always the parent or a caregiver. Like if their parents aren't around, and it's an aunt or uncle. But even that, if the parents aren't around, that's a problem. Like the kid is going to see it as a problem. So that would be the first step, is to go take the self-love quiz and see where you stand.
I went through the quiz, and I think it takes, because some of the questions are like, hey, are you addicted to this and that? And it takes a certain amount of honesty when you're going through it to be like, it kind of forces you to be honest. At first you're going through it and you're like, how real do I want to be here? But it does force you to look in the mirror and be like, man, these are questions I avoid asking myself. It's like we kind of put our head in the sand because we don't necessarily want to know the truth, because we don't know how to do anything about it. Like I can sit here and say, yes, I'm addicted to this and that, and I don't have self-love, but that's a very painful realization if you don't know how to get out of it. Right. So that's the first step, is like, you got to be real about it, but we need to have a plan of what to do. That's what I think. So can we move forward? So let's say someone takes it, they realize, maybe I have a couple things I can work on more than I thought. What do they do next? Obviously they can, work with Brad Chandler, but what kind of things do you go with when you work with somebody?
Yeah. So let me answer that. You said a couple important things I want to touch on before we answer this question. And that is,
Sure.
all change begins with awareness. I didn't know I had a problem, so therefore I couldn't change. I spent my whole life trying to be a better human being, watching Tony Robbins and going to the Zig Ziglars. And I mean, I've read a lot of books, right, as an adult, always trying to get better. But what I didn't know, and a lot of my clients is the same way, like they'll say, I've spent my whole life in personal development, in 3 to 5 hours with you, like everything changed. Like I knew what I had to do, but I couldn't do it. And why couldn't I do it? Because of these deeply buried programming that was buried in their subconscious mind that was ruling their behavior that they didn't even know was ruling their behavior.
Right.
So first of all change begins with awareness. I wanted to touch on a couple of questions on the self-love quiz so people can get an idea of what it asks you. So it asks you, do you have problems with deeply committed, connected, intimate relationships? If you go from one bad relationship to the next, or you're not in a relationship, or you're not in a deeply connected relationship, that's a sign you may lack self-love. If you find yourself judging other people a lot, you may lack self-love. If you find yourself judging yourself or talking negatively, you may not have self-love. If you're addicted to anything, you lack self-love, because there's no one who's an addict of anything that thinks they're enough. So if it's either work or shopping or travel or drugs, whatever it is, you definitely lack self-love. Do you have self-destructive behavior? Do you drink a ton? Do you take a lot of drugs? Like someone who loves themselves doesn't do self-destructive behaviors. So those I just want to give a smattering of kind of like, those are the things. Like, are you constantly in a triggered state? Do you take things personally? Do you always want to be right? Are you anxious? Are you depressed a lot? Are you constantly triggered? All of those things are signs that you lack self-love. And you don't need to go to 30 years of talk therapy like I did. It didn't do me any good, in 50 marriage counseling sessions. Just like most of my clients, they've been to multiple years, if not decades of talk therapy. Talk therapy and most marriage counseling, most focus on the conscious brain and the symptoms. I went to marriage counseling, maybe 50 different sessions. And a lot of times I'd walk out, at least with my first marriage, I'd be like, we should get divorced. It was actually worse coming out than it was going in. And why is because they talk about, well, hold her hand more and repeat back what she says and go on more date nights and be more affectionate. Well, the problem in an intimate relationship is never the actual relationship itself. It's the relationship that each individual has with themselves. So you can go say all that stuff, but if you're fighting for your worthiness and you've got two people who really don't think they're that great, that their subconscious mind doesn't think that great, it's really hard to ever come together. So conflict in my previous marriages would end up in 3 days of like silence and coldness and no affection. In my relationship now, conflict actually brings us together. Like we almost welcome it in a way because we can talk through it. I'm not trying to fight for my worthiness and she's not trying to fight for her worthiness. So if you feel that something is unsettled, that's always an opportunity to grow, because anytime you feel that someone's actions or some situation makes you feel a certain way, it just means you've got work to do. It's like when you have a temperature, it's your body's way of saying, hey, you're sick. So listen to it. Don't turn to alcohol or sex or weed, because all you're doing is pushing it down the road and actually making it worse. If you're drinking because you have anxiety, or you're smoking weed because you have anxiety, it actually increases your anxiety down the road. The next day when you're hungover, you're going to be more anxious than the first day. So what do? This goes back to your question. Most of us have issues because we've stuffed down the feelings that we had as a child because we weren't able to express them. So I have this tracker that I give to my clients, the daily emotional tracker. This is one thing you can start doing right this second. And that is, when you feel this negative emotion, I want you to pause. Instead of reacting and yelling back at your wife, just pause. Identify the emotion. And when you identify the emotion, don't say I am sad, because that's an identity that sticks. Say I am feeling sad, because the feelings come and go. As soon as you say I'm feeling, you go from your fight or flight, because if you're feeling sad, you're most likely in your fight or flight, the amygdala brain. As soon as you say I am feeling sad, it requires your brain to do thinking, which brings you into the prefrontal cortex. So it kicks you out of the fight or flight. So now you've identified the emotion. Now I want you to give yourself compassion for the emotion. So I want you to say, it's okay, Tim, that I'm feeling sad. How many times do you give yourself compassion for emotion? Most of the time it's like, hey, suck it up. I'd be playing golf. I'd be like, I'm nervous. What's wrong with you? You're an idiot. Like, you've got no bomb. I used to say this in my head. You've got no bombs dropping on you. You're at a country club. You know where your next meal is coming from. Like, why the hell are you nervous? Like, what's wrong with you? It would just exacerbate it. Now, if I get a little nervous, which I do at times still, it's a big tournament. I want to play well. I'm like, it's okay, Brad. I got you, man. It's okay. So we've paused. We've identified the emotion. We've given ourselves compassion for the emotion. And then you can try to figure out where it came from. And I can promise you 99% of the time, it's coming from something that someone did to you as a child that made you feel a certain way that you're bringing into this moment. And then finally, after you process all this, and you could do this with a spouse too, or significant other, or a friend, you could say, hey, what you just said made me feel this way. It's not your fault. Would you process this with me? And then you go through it, you talk. At the end, you can figure out what was the thought that triggered all of this. Because here's how it works. You have a thought, it always creates an emotion. That emotion creates a behavior and action. And usually that behavior or action reinforces the original thought, and then you just loop. So I'm disgusting. Okay, that makes me feel sad knowing that I'm disgusting. How am I going to feel better? I'm going to go eat a bunch of food. Okay, now I just ate a bunch of shit food. Now I'm like, oh my God, I really am fat and disgusting. And then we just go back, and it just keeps going and going and going. You're not fat and disgusting. You may not be at the weight you want to be, but you're not disgusting. You're a human being. You're enough just as you are. You always were and you always will be enough. So when you start believing that you're enough, then you're like, okay, I'm enough. So I'm not feeling the sadness to go eat. I can process this emotion. I can sit with it. I can let it, it'll actually start to dissipate. Instead of running from it, start to process that emotion. So that's one thing, whether you ever hire a happiness coach or a therapist or whatever, you can start doing that right now. And actually, you can go get that for free too. bradchandler.com/tracker. You can get it for free and start using it today.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, is it like one of the first steps towards healing is developing a habit of self-acceptance of our thoughts and feelings? Like we have to become aware of what we're feeling and what we're thinking and what's triggering us in the first place. But once we become aware of it, you just kind of sit with it. And like, if you're feeling embarrassed, just feel it and don't tell yourself you're stupid for feeling embarrassed. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. And a really big piece is have compassion. So if you're embarrassed, be like, it's okay. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. You're not going to die up here on stage. Fear of public speaking, I think, other than death, is the biggest fear that people have. What's the fear really? The fear is really a judgment. It's the fear of other people judging you. Why do you care if people judge you? You only care if people judge you if you feel that you're not enough. Right. If I said to you, hey, you're a real scumbag, Tim, because you have green hair, how would you react to me? You'd laugh and you'd be like, well, something's wrong with him. I don't have green hair. But if I said you're a jerk, you're lazy, and you really felt it, then you would be afraid of me judging you, right? So when you get to that point in your life where you just live in the truth that you are enough, you almost become bulletproof. Because now when people yell at me, I used to try to fight back or flight or what, it wouldn't be good. And now if someone attacks me verbally, like, I just feel compassion for them, because I'm like, oh my gosh, if they must be so hurt, I wish I could help them.
Yeah, this is so important. And for me, like when I went through the quiz, I'll share one big issue that I've had over the years is taking things personally. Like I get so sensitive. I was playing pickleball yesterday, and this guy was like making a joke that like implied I was like handicapped or something. And it was like obviously a joke, and like, it was just goofing around, but it stuck with me. And I'm like, why is this bothering me? I know he was just kidding with me. Like, why am I so sensitive? And I like went through that pattern, and what I started doing to help me on my desk, I have a little picture of myself as like a 5-year-old here to kind of remind me, I think a similar thing to what you're saying of compassion. Like, well, if little baby Tim, who's 5 years old, was feeling this way, what would I tell him? Yes. And it helps me to have a little bit more compassion over myself. But everything you're saying is 100% true. And I'm really glad that you're talking about it. I think it's needed, especially in our industry.
I tell my clients to do that same thing. I say, go get a picture. I just always go to 6-year-old self. I go get a picture of your 6-year-old self, put it on your desk, put it on your dresser. And when you feel embarrassed, when you feel judged, when you feel sad, it's not the 40-year-old, I don't know how old you are. It's not the 40-year-old version. It is the 6-year-old version. So if a little 6-year-old walk up to you and said, hey, I'm feeling really inferior, I'm feeling really sad, would you be like, shut up, or let's go get a shot, or let's go drink or smoke some weed? No, you put your arm around that person and you'd be like, it's okay, Tim, it's okay, Sally, like I've got you.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it has made a difference. I think I saw it maybe on like the Jay Shetty podcast. He talks about love sometimes, and it actually has helped me a lot. Like it's just a simple reminder, it triggers me because I'm working here all the time. Things come up. I'm always getting pissed. I'm like, hey, it takes work. Like this is not an overnight thing. And it's a slow process over time, but definitely has made a big impact. So is
So,
that the
so
main thing? Yeah. Go. What's next?
So Tim, it's not what's next. I want to make an important point about the
Okay.
5-year-old, the 6-year-old self.
Sure.
Trauma takes you out of the present. A lion attacks you. You're going to be thinking about that lion for the rest of your life, right?
Mhm.
But there's no lions anymore. So whatever happened to you as a 5-year-old, it's buried in your subconscious mind, and that feeling comes up over and over and over again. It dominates your life. The reason is because you never dealt with it. You never properly dealt with it. So in my work, in part of my work is hypnosis. It's a 5-week course, and in the third week, it's a 2-hour hypnosis session. And hypnosis is nothing more than a deep, relaxed state. Every human being is in hypnosis almost every day. If they're driving to work, you're not thinking about pushing the gas pedal and stuff. You're in a state of hypnosis. If you're taking a shower, you're not thinking about, hey, let me wash my right arm. You just do it. So the issue is you are living in the past. So in the hypnosis session, one of the things that I do is I take the child from the past. We tell the subconscious mind that you're no longer that child by this exercise called It's Not Me, which I learned from Marissa Peer. And then you take the child into yourself now, and you kind of, you make them one with you now. So you don't ever have to, if you have that feeling, it could be a second, because you can be like, oh, that's not me anymore. When my dad didn't show up to my 3rd T-ball game in a row, and I felt he didn't love me, and therefore I felt I wasn't enough, you start to get that feeling of I'm enough, and you're like, wait, I'm not a T-ball player anymore. I'm not 6 years old. I don't need my dad's love anymore, because the one person that can love you more than anyone in this world is yourself. And you are the most important person in your world. You should treat yourself like your best friend. You should love yourself unconditionally. And if you have children, that's the best thing that you can ever do. You teach a child to love themselves unconditionally by loving yourself unconditionally.
That's powerful. That is powerful stuff. So yeah, I'm trying to understand like what I mean, you have like it's like 8 weeks, right? Is that how long it is?
A 5-week program. Mm-hmm.
5 weeks, right? So can you break down maybe more of what it entails? If I can try to put myself in the shoes of people listening to this podcast, and they might be like, this is different, this is intimidating. Do I do this? Do I not? Like, I'm having a busy week. Like, I don't have time to deal with this. I got enough problems, and taking the kids to school, and my business is putting out fires. And how does someone wrap their head around this stuff? Because this is a paradigm shift.
So I was thinking about this in the gym earlier today. I went from the sauna to the shower, and I had a second to think about this, just this concept. And the concept was, I'm going to start talking to bigger and larger groups. And I was going to start the conversation by saying, someone is going to listen to my speech today, and nothing special about Brad Chandler, but someone's going to listen to my speech, and their life is going to forever be changed in a big way. And so there's kind of, I was thinking in my head, there's either 2, 3, or 4 kind of different people. The one person is, they know that they've got issues, but they're scared to face them. And they're just going to listen to this podcast and then go on.
Yep.
Then you've got the people like me 3 years ago that didn't know that they had a problem, and they might go take the self-love quiz and be like, oh my God, my life is going to change forever. And then you have people who are just like too scared to face it. And they're never going to, that's what I said, the first one. So too scared to face it. Second one is don't know they have a problem. And then I guess those are the 2 big categories. Like, or someone just doesn't want to take action for some reason. They're comfortable, or they're just so ingrained that they can't do it. It's just it's not worth it to them. So anyway, I got a little bit sidetracked on that. Sorry. But so the coaching program. The coaching program is 5 weeks. So in the first day, in the first session, I really talk about how change is possible, why change is possible. I talk about the programming. I talk about, some of my mentors and some amazing things that they said, because I want the person to believe that change is possible and we can change. And I explain to them how it works and how your subconscious mind works, and how we're going to use the science of neuroplasticity, which is just your brain's natural ability to regrow new neural pathways. And then the second half of that session, we get into a kind of like I have an intake form that asks a lot of questions about themselves. So I get to know the person a little bit better. The second session, we go a little deeper into their childhood. We figure out what is the actual problem they're trying to solve. And we start to formulate, what does their life look like without this issue? So I'm an alcoholic, let's say, and I came to you because I want to stop drinking. If I didn't drink anymore, what would life look like for me? What are the opportunities? How would my relationships improve? How would my health improve? How would my job improve? So we spend a lot of time doing that, and that becomes the basis of the transformational recording. Session 3 is a 2-hour hypnosis session. We basically I get you in a deeply relaxed state, and then I ask you to come up with scenes in your childhood or in your life that caused the pain that you have now. And it's incredible how people go right back to like 3 scenes. This happened, this happened, this happened. We figure out the emotions, the story they told themselves. Then I make this recording that basically rewires and recodes all of those untruths. And then the 4th session, we spend a lot on the daily tracker, and we go over the daily tracker and how has their life changed or not changed since hypnosis. And then the last session, I created this document called Your Success Depends on This. And it's all around how, so I got you out of the invisible prison, but people often leave prison and go back. So I have this way of, if you follow these things, you're never going to go back to that prison. So that's kind of what that 5-week program looks like. In addition, there's a Facebook group, private Facebook group for support. I give meditations from day one. I give some reading material. I have people journal. We do some really cool things. We have certain questions that we ask to track your progress. We track the self-love. So I've had countless clients go from lack of self-love or mild self-love to extreme self-love in 5 weeks.
So if someone just takes the quiz, there's, to me, it seems, and maybe I'm wrong, you let me know, a big jump between taking the quiz and then signing up for a 5-week program, which seems a little intense, as it probably needs to be. Is there an in-between that someone can kind of learn more information, or books that you recommend if they want to ease their way into it? Or am I thinking about that incorrectly?
I mean, I don't think it's a huge undertaking as you think it is. It's an hour a week and 2 hours the 3rd week. And then you've got, a 15, 16-minute meditation in the morning, a 16-minute meditation at night, and some journaling and reading 4 pages in a book. It's not as overwhelming as you think it is, because what we're doing is we're changing your flawed thinking. And you don't need to go run a marathon or build a factory, right? All we need to do is get you to change your thinking. We get you to change your thinking by going to the source of the pain that created the thinking in the first place. So it's not easy, but it's a really simple concept. So if people aren't ready to take that leap, they can join I have a Facebook group called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs, which I put a lot of great content in there. They can find that by going to bradchandler.com/Facebook. They can also read, I've got a number of books I recommend. The Way to Love by Anthony DeMello is absolutely amazing. There's a local author here in the DC area called Tara Brach, B-R-A-C-H. She has a book called Radical Acceptance. It's just like radically accepting everything in your life, not to the detriment that you sit on a couch all day and say, well, I accept this. No, but it's accepting, like you said earlier, your feelings, where you are in life. Just having acceptance of it. Most people don't accept the universe and what it gives them. Listen to most human beings and they're like, this happened to me and this happened to me and this happened to me. I think everything happens for us. So nothing bad happens to me in my life anymore. I don't have any more bad days, because how do I know if it's bad? Like, my car breaks down, my tire's flat and I can't go to the marina, I can't go to golf. Well, how do I know that had I not pulled out of my neighborhood, I wouldn't have gotten run over by a tractor trailer? So I just take everything in life and I try to learn something from it. And I always have the thought that it's happening for me and not to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to join the Facebook group. I'm not in it. I'm going to do that. And I'm trying to figure out how to tell people how important this is. A few years ago, I've struggled with anxiety as much as the next person. And I started working with a coach, and it's probably somewhat parallel to what you're talking about, probably a little different in many ways. But the work I started doing was literally journaling my thoughts, accepting my pain, and trying to build a habit of just like radical acceptance. And that habit alone, more than anything else of any book I've ever read, Tony Robbins, any business guru out there, has made my life better, made my business better, made my relationship better over anything else. If I tell, like, when I go to masterminds and, Tim, what's your piece of advice? I'm like, focus on this work. I don't want to say therapist because there's a lot of bad therapists out there, like you mentioned, but this work is very painful. And it's honestly, I think it's almost near impossible to do it yourself. Like, you kind of need help to get, because it's like when you're a fish who's in the water doesn't know he's in the water because he's been in the water his whole life. Like, you can't, you're stuck with this frame of the world, and you need someone to help you out of it, because you literally can't process your pain. That's why you're in the place you're in the first place. So I can't stress this enough. This is so important. Brad, I'm glad that you've taken this journey. I think everyone should join the free Facebook group at the very least. Whether you're scared or not, just to dive into it, because it is rewarding. No matter if you're making $1,000 a year or $1 million a year, this stuff actually matters. The money really doesn't matter. So I know we only have a few minutes left. Any other thoughts or wisdom you want to share with the people listening?
So, I mean, this audience is all about business owners, right? Entrepreneurs. And I can tell you how it affected my business for so many years. I was constantly trying to do the next best thing, because when you don't feel enough, nothing's ever enough. So it didn't matter what we were doing. It was never good enough. So I made 5 business mistakes that cost $9 million. And when I look back, all of those business mistakes, most of them had to do with me trying to prove my worth. So we had constant chaos in the business. I attracted the wrong people. We brought in, high level management people that I thought would like take me to the promised land in terms of financial, and they were the wrong fit. And I probably knew they were the wrong fit, but I'm like, oh, my subconscious was like, hey, this guy, he can make you a ton of money, and therefore you're going to be worthy. So it doesn't only affect like your relationships, it affects everything. Like this childhood programming literally affects everything in your life. And again, if you want to know, like, hey, how do I have an issue? You can either look back at your life and look at the relationships and, do you take things personally? Do you always have to be right? Or you can just go take the quiz, bradchandler.com/love. And if you have anything but extreme self-love, then you've got this amazing ability to change your life, which will change your relationships and your relationships with your kids and your business partner. And it's just amazing. It's life-changing stuff. And I'm in the middle of a book now. Dr. Paul Conti, he's a trauma expert and has been in the business for like 30 years. And he's like, it's insane how public enemy number one is unresolved childhood trauma. Number one. And he was actually wrote the book in the middle. I'm listening to it on Audible. He wrote the book in the middle of the pandemic. And he's like, if you think the pandemic is a problem, no, it's not. And so when you see my passion, it is incredible. Now, every single problem in this world pretty much comes down to an individual's lack of self-love. And the great thing is there's a freaking fix, and I found it, and I want to share it with you. I want to give it to you, right? And you don't have to go through 30 years or have a lobotomy, or like I said, go through a marathon race. You just have to do like 5 to 10 hours worth of work and believe in change and be willing to look at things from a different perspective. And man, things can get really good, because I've been over there and now I'm here now, and it's really great.
I think a lot of people who maybe have the outcome of wanting to better their life, they take on challenges like you mentioned, marathon, or like the 75 hard or something like that. What are your thoughts on that type of challenge, which is very prevalent in our industry? Do you think that's healthy, unhealthy, not related? Yeah.
So I think anytime that you do something that has a good diet and good exercise, you can't go wrong. But here's the thing. How many people do you know, Tim, in your life who have lost 60 pounds and then a year later they've gained back 80 pounds? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why is it? Why is that? It's because exactly everything we've been talking about today. Until you figure out the mental part of what caused you to put the 60 pounds on, you can go do 75 hard. You can go do 75 hard 3 times in a row. You can go lose 60 pounds. But if you don't do this work, you're going to be right back to where you were. So when someone comes to me, one of my buddies, and they're like, hey, I just lost 60 pounds. I'm like, dude, that's great. Like, I'm proud of you. I really am proud of you. Good job. But I got an important question for you. Did you deal with what got you there in the first place? And almost all of them, they're like, no, I'm just eating better. I get that. You're eating better. You're exercising, but it's not going to last because you used diet as a way to make yourself feel better. So yeah, I have no problems with them, but you can do all the work you want in terms of like diet and exercise. Weight is a mental thing. It's just like sleep. People have sleep problems. They're going to the doctors and they're giving them these pills. I had a call a couple minutes ago that literally I just got off of before we started this podcast. And he's a coach of mine. He says he went to a doctor 3 years ago for a stomach ache, and the guy pushed depression pills on him. He was like, I'm not depressed. He goes, oh, you don't really need it. He says, why don't you just try this? And the guy's like, I don't want to try it. He goes, just try it. See if you feel better. He's like, no. He's like, I never went back to him. So unfortunately, in Western medicine wants to push the drugs, whether it's sleep or anxiety or depression, but all of those problems come down to the mind, the way we think.
And it's important that you face it. You have to face the pain, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It may be scary. You may not have developed the skills to do it. And it's not easy. Brad's not saying it's easy, but it's necessary, 100% necessary. We only got one life here. And Brad, I appreciate you hopping on here. I want to help you spread this message as much as possible. I hope it leads to other conversations in the business world in general, especially ours. And I'd love to have you on again sometime. Thanks, Brad. Thanks for coming on here.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Take care.